Hello students, in our last video we have gone through a short review of earlier Indian history. That means ancient, medieval and the modern history of India. You can watch the detailed timeline of Indian history in that video on our official YouTube account, Happy Persons the Concept School Academic. Now the first chapter is when, where and how. In this chapter we will discuss that why we study history and why it is so important to remember the dates and the happenings of the past of the different parts of the world, because when, where and how type of interrogation deals with the dates, events and evidence, that means sources of modern Indian history. So let's begin with the chapter. Dear students, have you ever thought why the dates are so important? Remembering date is not an easy job. Moreover, it is not even an interesting task for many of us. But have you ever thought why we need to remember dates or why we should study history? Well, anything which we see happening in our surrounding must have begun on some day. Because nothing can be happen without beginning, so beginning is given very important. For example, we drink tea or coffee, but how did it become a part of our daily habit and when it first came into use by a man? Not only this, we all must have traveled by a train. So when did trains start in India? Such questions take us back to the notion of dates and time. But time is not always precise. Sometimes we even don't know about the exact date or time of that particular happenings. We can't fix a particular date because many of the things happen over a stretch of time. We know that the Britishers came to India in 1608 and then they started ruling in India from 1757. But do we know the exact date of the year 1757 on which they started ruling? No. Similarly, if we move back to the example of tea, do we know the exact date on which Indians started drinking tea? That is why it is not possible to fix date for each and every event. Now the question is why we associate dates with history. It is because in early times the court historians used to record only the crucial events of king's life, such as his coronation, marriage and the battles fought by that particular king. So now we can understand why dates are so important in historical point of view. Here one more question arises, that which dates are important? A date doesn't become important if something big happened on that particular day in the past, but it gains its significance on the basis of how much keen we are to study the events which happened during a particular time. If our focus changes, the importance of the dates also changes. Let's take an example. The British historians began their history with the first Governor General of Bengal, Warren Hastings. Remember, first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings, and it continues up to the last Viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten. Their history mainly focuses on the activities, policies and the lifestyle of these British men. It does not talk about anything else. Here what I want to say is that some other events were also happening at the same time in India within the society, but nothing was put on record for them. So the chronology of the life of these British officers marks a different chapter of British history in India. So can we write history covering the events which were related to Indian society within the format of the British Governor Generals? Yes, we can, and for this we have to write it in a sequence so that it not only sounds like a story but also the one with proper sense. In 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist, Scottish means a person of Scotland, he was a Scottish economist and political philosopher, wrote 3 volumes named A History of British India. James Mill has divided history of India into 3 main categories, namely Hindu, Muslim and the British. on the basis of the rulers of the different periods of time. According to Mill, all Asian societies were at a lower level than the European civilization. According to him, Hindu and Muslim rulers had ruled India and there was huge intolerance against the religion of each other. Some social evils were also present such as casteism, superstitious belief, etc. According to him, it was necessary to introduce European education and manners to them for their upliftment. Do you think that such an idea can be accepted? Absolutely not. First of all, we cannot categorize Indian history as totally a Hindu history or Muslim history as rulers. From both the religions had ruled within the same period of time. Moreover, many other faiths were also existed in India simultaneously with Hindu and Muslim religion, and they all were practicing their faiths freely without having any choice or burden. Moving away from the British classification, the historians have divided Indian history into ancient, medieval, and the modern. But this categorization also has some problems. Generally, when we talk about modern period, it denotes the growth of science and technology and also the freedom, liberty and an equality to the citizens of that society. But during the rule of Britishers, there were no such rights given to the Indian citizens. Rather, they were forced by Britishers for one thing or another. Moreover, Britishers took away all the resources and wealth from India. Thus, many of the historians treat it as colonial period. Let's see. What is the colonial period? The word colony means a group of people who settle in a new place but keep ties to their homeland. So let's see how the colonization started in India. When one country is ruled by another country in order to political, economic, social and cultural changes. Again, I am repeating the definition of colonization. When one country is ruled by another country in order to political, economical, social and cultural changes, this process is called colonization, and the country which is ruled by another country is called its colony, while the country that rules is called imperialist country. Here the word imperialist means country which expand their empire in their colony. In this way, India was a colony of an imperialist country, England. So in this book, we will study how Britishers established their rule in India and took control over all the Indian territories, revenue and resources of our country. They forced Indians to sell their goods at lower price and made them produce the crops they needed. The Britishers also brought change in our culture, customs, economy and taste. All these things refer to colonization of India. A feeling of nationalism also arose during the same time. Nationalism means one's love for his country to get freed from foreign rule. So with the full spirit of nationalism, many educated Indians realized the purpose of coming British Empire. All these nationalists came front and they questioned against the British rule. So now the question arises, how do we confirm this thing, and how do we say that all these things are true? How do we know this? Is there any source behind this? Without source or evidence, nothing is mentioned in history. So the sources of modern Indian history need to be learned first. Historians rely on different sources for writing history, such as administrative sources. So let us see what is an administrative sources. One of the important source is the records of the British administration. The Britishers had a view that each and every policy and agreement should be recorded so that it could be studied and debated if it is required in future. This led to an administrative culture of writing memos, reports, etc. Record rooms were maintained within the office of Tahsildars, Commissioner's Office and law courts. Specialized institutions like archives and museums were made in order to preserve these important documents or records. In present time, if you visit any government office like Bhumi Abhilekh or Kotwali, you will find their bundles of such old records kept safely in red clothes. Along with this record, some calligraphists were also appointed in order to copy the important documents, because there were no Xerox machines or printing technology like today we use. Calligraphist means the person who writes beautifully, like our Zafar sir and our Tolkar sir. The practice of survey became very important during the time of Britishers. They wanted to know India in order to administer it properly, so they conducted detailed survey of our Indian continent. Behind this survey, there were some objective to map out India, to know the soil quality, to check the suitability for different crops, to know the flora and fauna. The flora and fauna means all the animals, plants and biological specialities in a particular region or period. Simply it means vegetations of that particular country, and to know the local histories. So that these surveys were conducted. Some of the surveys conducted were botanical survey, archaeological survey, forest survey and zoological survey. Along with these surveys and administrative records, some other source of history were there, like diaries of people, biographies and autobiographies. So let us see what is biography and autobiography. When someone writes about his own life, it's called autobiography, and when someone writes about others' life, it's called a biography. So biographies and autobiographies, popular booklets, newspaper, ideas of leaders, poets and social reformers are considered as a sources of modern Indian history. All these proven as a good source to write the history of modern India. So dear students, hope you understood the meaning of first chapter, when, where and how. In next video, we will discuss about how the English East India Company and few other European trading companies set their foot as traders and simultaneously become ruler in India. We will see this information in chapter number 2, from trade to territory. So let's wait for the next update. Thank you so much.